Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Spilling Ink, the talk show that takes you behind the scenes in the publishing world to get you a little bit of a look at the authors behind the books. Tonight we have with us Kelly Charron. How are you tonight, Kelly?
Great, thank you.
Awesome. And we also have Cynthia Vespia. Hi, Cynthia.
Hi.
And then Katie, the queen of the scarf, Solitis. Hi, Katie.
Hello. I know I had a different scarf on every week, I think.
I like that scarf, although I do miss the cool straight hair you had going the other week. It was like glamour shots, Katie.
Oh, all right. Next week.
You still look nice, though.
Thank you.
Oh, awesome. So tonight we've got lots of different topics we're talking about. We're talking about new releases and prepping for them, getting ready. We're going to be talking about query letters and the whole process behind that. We're also going to be talking about novellas and trying to dispel that stigma that surrounds indie authors. So, but first, I'd like to hear a little bit about from our guest and what they do. Kelly, tell us a little bit about what you write.
Well, I have two novels that I've published so far, and they're both thrillers. They are serial killer books, which narrows it down a little bit for me.
Okay.
Yeah, people are like, it's not just a regular psychological thriller. No, they're serial killers. So yeah, the first one is called Pretty Wicked, and it follows a 15-year-old girl who is the daughter of a local police detective in a small Colorado town. And she decides to learn everything she can from her father and do some very naughty things, trying to get away with it. So that's book one. It's really fun. And then, spoiler, the book two takes place 12 years later. I know. You don't want to spoil it. But if you read a little bit back of the book, you'll know that takes place 12 years later when my main character, Ryan, is in jail. And what she's going to try to do, sharing the point of view time with a forensic psychiatrist, to see if she'll, qualify to get out of prison on a technicality. So it's pretty fun.
Your main character is Ryan, you said, right?
Yeah, Ryan Wilkinson.
Okay. All right. So Ryan's in prison because Ryan was very, very bad in book one. Now,
Right.
Here's a question for you. She's our main character through book one, right?
Yeah.
But she's also a bad guy. But in the book, is she a protagonist or what is she? How do you set her up?
She is the hero of her own story. So in her mindset, she has her reasons, she has her motivation, she knows best, she thinks she's smarter than everybody else. And so for me, she is the protagonist. I mean, for a lot of people, they would say, how can that be? But, people have done it before. I thought of Wicked a lot.
Okay.
And, people think of, the villain, but I'm misunderstood. And let me tell you my side of the story. Well, I wanted to tell the story from the villain's point of view, and they're not misunderstood. They are just as despicable as you would imagine them to be, because I thought, that's a little bit of a different angle. And I wanted to play with that.
You know what I immediately thought of, and you may or may not like this. I love it, but what I first thought of was Dexter, which is a Showtime show. And if you haven't seen Dexter, it is very gruesome, very graphic.
Who
but
has not seen Dexter? My
What's
God.
that?
I said, who has not seen Dexter? Come on, the best.
There are people out there. Katie,
Come on, people.
dude, Dexter is on HBO now, or excuse me, it's on Netflix now, I believe. So
Good.
it is a phenomenal show, amazing writing, but the same kind of character where he's a bad guy, but he's also kind of not. So I really like that.
Here's the distinct difference, though, that I had between that, because of course I love Dexter, but Dexter doesn't want to be the villain. He tries to if he has to do the bad things, he has his code, and he, goes after the bad people. So he, has a bit of more of a conscience. If you're looking at my character, she'll agree that a lot of people would think she's the villain, and she's okay with that. So it's a little bit different, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. I like it. We're gonna get back to you and talk a little bit more about your stories here in just a little bit. But Cynthia, could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you write?
Sure. Cynthia Vespia. I'm the original Cyn. I write mostly all things fantasy, honestly, urban, dark, you name it, and it's also a lot of crossover appeal in different genres. I've thrown in comedy, romance, drama, magic realism. All of it. My latest release came out this past summer, right on the heels of Wonder Woman, and it was my own superhero named Karma, which was actually, she starts off as a fashion model and then she winds up discovering that she has these latent powers, and I have a whole world there with different supervillains and superheroes that it's a popular thing going on right now, and I just wanted to be a part of it. So
That's awesome. Now, when you started writing it, were you looking at the market and saying, okay, you know, this is a really popular genre right now. People are liking this. I'm going to kind of write for that market, or were you already planning to write that and it just worked out that way?
It's really weird. Honestly, this story started out completely different. It was going to be about female private investigators. And then the superhero theme started coming around, and I said I wanted to be a part of that. And it took on a completely different life of its own. And the character herself changed because I had her as, this Caucasian blonde, and she morphed into the characters of an Indian heritage that I wanted to explore, some different racial stuff going on there instead of the usual archetypes that you see all the time in the superhero vein. And I've been met with some really good reviews on that aspect that I've represented them in a different light. So it's been fun to write. I've gotten tremendous feedback from it so far. One of the things I wanted to touch on, though, because Kelly was saying she actually was writing about villains, I love writing about villains, so I always give them their own proper place in it. And in this series, they seem to have taken over from the hero, which I wanted a balancing act. I didn't want them to actually take over, but it did give me an idea to do like a spin-off of their own story. So
that's awesome. Now since we've been, we talked about Dexter a little bit with Kelly, but have you read, and Katie's going to roll her eyes at me because I'm totally a fangirl for this other author, but have you read the book Vicious by V.E. Schwab?
I have not.
I would, as authors, I feel like our reading time has dwindles with the more books that we try to write. So it's tough. But Vicious is a superhero story, but also not. And I think that the way you're describing what you enjoy and what you write, you would really dig that because it tells the superhero story and the supervillain story a completely different way. So I think you would really dig it, and I can appreciate that.
And that was my approach as well, because I didn't want to do, it's not because it's not a comic book. It may be in the future. I've got my eyes set. My tremendous cover artist. My tremendous cover artist. I'm going to get back in to actually do a comic book version of it when I can. But yeah, I didn't want to approach it in the same comic book vein because it is a novel, so you can get into the mindset a little bit more. And I think that's where it lands into the villain actually having their own personality traits that come out. And, I call them the Sin Squad, and their powers are all based on the 7 deadly sins. So,
okay, that's awesome. I like it.
That's so interesting. I'm on board with that.
Yeah.
You had mentioned possibly having you said no comic book, but what about graphic novel?
Yeah, that's actually what I meant in terms of that whenever I do it to come out and do the whole storyboarding and get the artistry down and stuff like that. So.
Your cover art is wonderful. You did send that to us, right? So we can flash it up on the screen when we do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I hired a guy to do. Normally, I'll do my own covers just through Photoshop, but this time I wanted that representation of a comic book character. So I sought out an artist. I found somebody on DeviantArt who did such a good job of the first cover. I wanted him for the subsequent series, so I had him just do all 5 of them in one sitting within a couple of weeks. So that it would have the continuity to it. And also I got excited looking at him going, okay, I got to write the next one.
Now, you said you've got the cover art for all 5 in the series. Is that up on your website anywhere, or are those yet to be revealed?
No, they're a secret. The only place that you can maybe see them, I did a trailer. I do book trailers. So I did one for Karma, and they're in the beginning really, really quick. So that's the only way if you could maybe pause and look at them. But it's not the finished cover. It's just his character design. So.
Okay. Now, and I'm looking at your website right now, which is CynthiaVespia.com, and I'm looking. You've got the Demon Hunter series, and then you've got is it Silk Butters?
That's the comic book hero. That's her actual name, Silky Butters, which
Silky. Okay.
Funny story behind that. I used to work for one of the hotel casinos in Las Vegas, and we had a guest come in, and she put on the guest card Silky Butters. And my friend and I were so curious about that name, it just stuck with me. I was like, that's a character for sure.
That's cool. That's very cool. And so, how does this new book differ from the other series that you've written? It's all fantasy, but is there a different? I mean, how are you categorizing them?
Right, right. The Demon Hunter was actually really, really dark. It's something that I wanted to explore. It's in the more of the vampire-esque vein that was popular a while back, and I did zombies and werewolves all throughout the entire series. But it was really dark, and it's something that I wanted to explore that was kind of gruesome and over the top, you know, violent. Whereas the Silky Butter superhero series, I approached it with a little bit more lighthearted. I was very aware of not putting in too much strong language and violence because I wanted it to be crossover for a little bit of a younger audience. Not too young, but still they could read it without any problem. Okay. So I was very aware of that going into it.
Gotcha, gotcha. Oh, they look really interesting. And one thing that I think is awesome, the more I learn about cover art and the more I research it, I really like the way you've branded yourself with them. It's very easy to see from one book to the next. Even if I was just scrolling through Amazon, okay, boom, this is a book that's in the series I want. This is the next book. You know, I know.
I appreciate that because like I said, I did my own covers and it was a lot. The first Demon Hunter, I went through several different changes for it. But no, I appreciate that because it's something that was in the back of my mind that I really wanted to look like a series.
Yeah. Well, and you know, you've said that you write a lot of different, you know, genres, but they do all kind of fall under that fantasy umbrella. Is that right?
I tried to narrow it down to that genre. I guess you could call it speculative fiction, but nobody ever calls it that anymore. So it's mostly, you know, it's magic, it's superpowers or whatever, but it's all stuff that maybe could happen in reality, but has a little bit of touch of weirdness to it. I read Dean Koontz is the author that inspired me to write, and his novels have a little bit of that same thing going into it.
Yeah, and I always and I'm not the one that came up with it, but I like to call it magical realism. So right. You know, it's real life, but it does have just a touch of the paranormal in it, maybe. But no, that's really cool. And I was asking about the fantasy umbrella, so to speak, because you know, I just signed on with a publisher a couple months ago, and one of the things that they kind of nailed me on is that I wrote in too many different directions, and that it was inconsistent. People didn't know what they were going to be getting into when they read the next book. So yeah, so I think it's good that all of your books at least have kind of that common magical element, at least.
I became conscious of doing that recently because I felt for myself as an indie author that I was doing the same thing, going in a lot of different directions, and I wanted to narrow down my own readership. But what you were just saying about the publisher is one of the reasons that I've stopped, and you guys are going to get into this in a minute, why I've stopped querying or even approaching agents and publishers, because I write what I want to write, and it doesn't always reflect on what's popular in the audience or in the publishing world, or, you know, what they're after or so forth. And so my ideas come to me so randomly that sometimes I can't narrow them down, and I just write what I write, you know, like you see a lot of it's contemporary. It has nothing to do with magic. And that was some of my earlier work.
That's something that I really would love to touch on, though, because you mentioned about querying agents and you write what you want to write. Sorry if I interrupted you.
No.
There's no if about it, Katie. You interrupted her, and it was rude.
I know. I'm sorry. Bad Katie. Bad. No, but here's the thing, though. Depending on if you're going with a traditional big five publisher and, you know, querying agents, or whether you're going with a small press publisher, a lot of them are just trying to follow trends. Mm-hmm. If you're going with a big five, you've got a 2-year lead time before that book ever sees the light of day. How are they forecasting what's going to be popular in 2 years? If you're going with a smaller press, you have a smaller time window, maybe let's say 6 months before you hit the market. But still, they're forecasting guesswork on what's going to be popular.
Exactly. And this is why I always tell new writers when they ask me about it, I say, don't ever follow the trends. If something's popular right now, by the time you're done writing it, it's going to be 15 minutes ago. So you might as well just write whatever you want, and maybe that'll be the next big thing. Who knows?
But then there's also the damned if you do, damned if you don't, like Jason said, where if you do write what you feel like writing and you do cross genres, which I know I do, I know Jason does, pretty much every author I know crosses genres at some point, then you get slapped on the wrist for doing that because now you're confusing your readers.
Well, when I first set out to start writing, I wrote one novel, and it took me like 32 or 34 years to write it because I was always terrified I would never be able to actually do it if I told myself, okay, I'm actually writing this novel, that somehow my nerves would get the best of me and I wouldn't be able to do it. So it was a bucket list thing for me, more of a challenge. And I wrote that novel and I was like, okay, oh man, I really love doing this. So I want to write this next one. And I had these ideas in my head, and like you said, they just kind of went in different directions. And I'm like, I don't care, you know, I'm writing because I really love doing it. And at this point now in my writing career, though, I kind of felt like, you know, I'm being more serious about this. I've got 5 novels out there right now. I'm doing a lot of short fiction that's being published in anthologies, and maybe I should put on my grown-up pants a little bit and see if I can be more responsible about what I'm presenting. So signing on with this publisher was fantastic. I'm really happy about it. But what they want is thrillers. You know, they have a wide variety of authors that write for them, but what they want from me is the big suspense thriller, which is popular in its own right, regardless of the trends. So I am having to kind of convert the way I think about things to follow in that direction. And it's a challenge because while I still love the writing and I love what I do, I've also got to be conscious and responsible and say, okay, well, I know this is what my publisher is going to want, so I'm going to go into this direction instead of spinning out and getting all ADD'd out somewhere in La La Land, which is what I normally do. I wrote a little novella over the summer that I absolutely loved, and it was just a really wacky horror story, which I love to write. My horror stories are they're pretty effed up, you know. I don't know where they're going to go, but it's never good. And I'm looking at this story, I was like, you know what? I could turn this really bizarro horror story into a thriller. So that's going to be one of my projects over the next year is taking this, you know, 25,000 word novella and converting it into a suspense thriller. So it'll be interesting to see if I can even do that. But we were going to talk about.
That's the challenge, though, isn't it?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, especially when you already have the story that you loved in your head, and you're like, okay, do I really want to pervert this story by making it more commercial? And it's funny, my editor and I talk about this all the time now, because I will have a rough day or a bad night, and I'll just start sending her messages. I'm like, oh, what the hell am I doing? Why am I doing this? And she was like, you know what? We can do what we love, but let's also be marketable. You know, we also kind of want to pay the bills at the same time, which, you know, is fair.
It's interesting that you say that. I was at a writing conference. There's a huge one here in Surrey, British Columbia, in October every year. And what's that?
I said BC. I have Canadian citizenship. That was my
BC for life.
That's right. Straight thugging down here. So I went to the conference, and I actually got to sit down with a woman from Amazon, and she was, you know, one of the acquiring editors for their different imprints. And we were talking about the very thing about having, you know, she's like, what do you write? And I said, I write thrillers and I write urban fantasy. And she's like, well, I've already published in thrillers, so I would suggest you stick with that and not even try to do the urban fantasies anytime soon. And I was like, but, you know, I just went to this great seminar, and this author was talking about how she has multiple things, but her promise to the reader is the same. So whether she's writing romance or romantic suspense or a thriller or a fantasy book, they all have the same, like, you know, key things in it that you can expect to have. And she goes, who is that? And I named the author, and she goes, yeah, she's one of mine. I'm trying to rein her in. She goes, she's doing way too many things.
Wow.
And so I was really interested in that. And I said, but you look at like Kelly Armstrong and Stephen King, and there's so many authors out there that do, you know, different genres. And she goes, they didn't start out like that. She goes, they, you know, started out in one, crafted themselves for years in that. Stephen King was horror for a lot longer than he ever started to release those other things. She goes,
so 20 books was straight horror.
So she goes, for you to start out that way is going to be really, really tough. But I mean, I still have it in my mind, like, okay, I have my thrillers this way. I'm still going to try and get an agent and query the urban fantasy, because that's that can be a separate thing, right? So I think if you're willing to be hybrid, or you're willing to go with different publishing options, then you can have different things.
Yeah, and the hybrid choice, I think, is something a lot of indies are doing now because of the ability to get the notoriety of being with a publisher and still keep that freedom of publishing what they want when they want to.
Yes.
For sure. And I think that for me personally, I'm going to still have my passion projects. I'm going to still write what I want to write, but I'm going to put on my responsible pants, which I'm not very good at. So we'll see how it goes. But as far as querying goes, I want to talk about that tonight. And I'm going to say right up front, I am not an expert at querying. And you know what? Maybe I'll post this. I sent it to Katie. I'll take out names and stuff like that. But I queried one publisher early in this last summer, and 6 weeks later, I ended up getting a reply from them that my prose was weak and needed a serious edit, and then they would consider it. And you know, after a week of drowning in my own tears, I hired my now editor and resubmitted, and you know, went from there, and everything's been good. So I have in my life sent out one query letter for a novel, and it ended up going the right direction. And we had a Big Five author on here, oh gosh, a little over a month ago now, maybe 2 months ago now. Her name was Christina Henry, and her story was shockingly similar, only also a little bit ridiculous. She sent a query letter out, and I think it was, what was it, like within 2 or 3 weeks, she was signing contracts, you know, for multiple book contracts.
It happens.
it was incredible. And but she reiterated many times that's not the way it normally goes. But like we were talking about off air, at least you guys were, if it doesn't always matter who you know. If you didn't write a book that they want, that publisher's not going to take it. You know, regardless of if it's just phenomenal literary fiction, if they just want horror, or if they just want urban fantasy, you're still going to be shit out of luck. So doing your research and finding the right publisher for your market is going to be super important. But now that I've kind of rambled off here, Cynthia, you said that you are no longer querying publishers. Did you query for a long time before you decided to stop?
I did. I've actually been writing for 2 decades, since I was 18 years old.
What?
I just aged myself, but whatever.
Holy cow.
But I actually self-published back when it wasn't cool to do so. My very first book that I ever wrote was a female gladiator story called The Crescent. And I just wanted to see my book in print. So I went through this publishing company, and I had the book made, and I was excited about it. Fast forward to today, that book is actually in pre-production to be a feature film. So
wow.
I don't know what's going to happen.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I've queried for a long time a lot of different stories. I've got, I think, 8 to 12 books on my website that I finished. The Demon Hunter was actually published by a small publishing house, but it never reached like the mainstream status that I wanted it to. I wanted to be like Tor or Forge or something like that. But over this past year or so, I was trying to query my new one. You know, I said, let me try it again, see what happens. And I got so disillusioned with the process that I just said, you know what, I'm just gonna. It's too much. It's becoming work instead of being fun. To me, I want to write for the love of it, not this is actual work now. I mean, it is work, but I'm losing my passion for it because of all the marketing and, you know, all the pressure trying to find an agent or publisher or whatever. I want to write for the enjoyment of it and to hear from readers. So I just stopped doing it, and I just realized that maybe that's not the route for me, because I keep getting the silence or the stonewall or whatever. And I actually have a couple of friends of mine who were with big houses, and they broke away from big houses and went indie, and they told me it's a lot better off. You're a lot better off for it. They don't really do much for you anyway. So, I mean, if they're going to tell me that, and it's easy for them to say because they already have a platform built, but still at the same time, it was worth listening to them, their 2 cents about it, because I'm tired of beating my head against the wall with these different options and avenues and trying every little thing and just not getting it. So I'd rather just write what I want to write, publish it, gain my own audience, and see what happens from there.
Well, it sounds like you kind of have your own platform built, and I don't know what your readership is like, but you have a lot of books on here. You have a beautiful website, beautiful cover art, and I think that if you can do it, if it doesn't drive you nuts having to do everything yourself, then just do it. You know, right?
But we're all a little nuts to actually want to be in this field and try to think we're going to make any money out of it anyway.
Yeah.
But that's where I say, you have to love it to begin with. Nobody goes into writing to become, if you're like, I want to become a world famous, successful millionaire author, go do something else, because it's not going to happen for most of us. So I'm just saying, I write because I love it. I just had a short horror novel, which I don't even write horror most of the time, but it was a short horror story that I had, and it was actually published in Skelos Press, just came out. So I was excited about that. Yeah. So it's fun, and it's fun interacting with the community. That's what I love about being a writer. I love doing the events where I can meet readers face to face or other writers. So that's why I do it, just for the love and passion of it. At this point, if I make it, great. But I'm doing my own thing, and we'll see what happens with it.
Awesome. Well, Kelly, can you tell us a little bit about your publishing journey and when you got started?
Yeah, so I started writing my first book probably about 11 years ago, and I was late with it too. It took me about 7 years to complete, but I completed 2 degrees in that time, so I had to keep putting it off to do homework. So I was like, why am I doing this?
What kind of degrees do you have?
I have a social work degree and an English lit degree.
Fantastic.
Which are not even paying my bills. So there you have it. My husband's like, why didn't you do like something in medicine or something else? I'm like, really, I should have. So the English lit, I suppose, did help a little bit, but there we are. So I wrote an urban fantasy first, and I queried it, maybe only about 30, 35 queries, and I had some full requests, and it was okay. I was feeling pretty good, but in the end, it was the very start of urban fantasy dying. It was so close, I guess, it was still too close to after Twilight. Nobody wanted to look at urban fantasy anymore, and they were like, no. So I was like, okay, I've got to write something else. And thrillers and murder are my thing.
What year was that you had written that first urban fantasy?
Whatever 11 years ago would be. So like
2006?
Yeah, 2000.
Okay.
You say 2005, 2006, I think I was doing it, but I started it. Anyway, so maybe even longer. I don't know. It's hard to remember exactly, but it took me a while, and then I immediately started to write the sequel, and then was like, no, I need to do something else, because if I'm querying the first one and then nobody's watching it, they're not going to want a sequel for it. So then I wrote Pretty Wicked, and querying that, actually it went as good as can be without getting the agent. So I sent out upwards of 140 queries probably for it, and we're talking Canada, US, England, like all over. I tried. I got a lot of full requests, probably about 20. And a lot of one agent I even spoke to for like 2 years, and it was, I really love the concept. This is so great. The writing's wonderful, all of these lovely things, but it's not quite young adult. It's not quite adult. And yes, she's 15 years old, but you're also in her head as she's doing really bad things. And she goes, I don't know how, people were just over and over again, how do we sell that? How do we sell that? Publishers not going to touch that. So then it was a lot of, send me the next thing. So it's just a lot of that. So it was like not the worst experience. It was still, there was hope there. So some of the people are on a list. I'll send them something else when I have it. But I wrote the sequel to it, and I felt like that could stand alone. So I thought, I'll throw a few queries out there to people who are interested in C. And, a few people were like, we still love the character of Ryan, but your alternate point of view of the forensic psychiatrist, I'm just not feeling a connection. That was like, the lingo, just not in love with it. Just not, for me. So, and I loved it and didn't want to totally overhaul it. So I put it up myself. Why not?
That's awesome. And how has it been performing for you? Are you happy with how
it's hard to get exposure. It's a niche within a niche. You know what I mean? It's already like when you have horror thriller-ish type of a book, it's already limiting your audience, and then further limit that with serial killers, I find. Because I've done a lot of indigo and chapter signings and different things, and then people come over and they're like, oh, it's a thriller, what is this? And as soon as I say it's a serial killer book, most of them are gone. They're like, oh, good luck with that, and they walk away. So it's like, oh, okay. it's hard. I'm still exploring and trying to tap into where my readers are. I'm hoping with the urban fantasy books, it's a young adult series, and I'm hoping that that has established itself already. We already have great authors who write in that, and hopefully there's room for new material from different authors to come in. So
the marketing is what stumps everybody. It doesn't matter what genre you're in. When it comes to the marketing, you almost feel like everything you do is wrong. And what other people do, if you try it, it doesn't work the same way for you. So it's a lot of just throwing shit at the wall and hoping something sticks.
The law of averages, right?
Yeah,
well,
pretty much.
You hope anyway.
I mean, because there's, everybody that you ask, if you say, well, how do you market your books? Everybody has something that they do. And whether or not it works, that's just what they do. Whether it's the Amazon ads, Facebook ads, Twitter ads, the newsletter swapping, posting on Facebook groups, posting on Twitter. What is it? BookBub.
NetGalley.
What's that?
I did NetGalley a few times to try to get reviews.
NetGalley, yep.
Because they always say reviews are the best. Sorry, what was that?
Reviews are the hardest thing to get for me.
They're hard. And then doing, different types of, blogs and interviews and blog tours and all the rest of those, which I've done my fair share of. And it's really hard. I think I'm up to, on Goodreads for the first book, which has been out for at least a year and a half now, maybe 2, a whopping like 90. It's like, oh, wow, look out, so it's tough to get them for sure.
Right. Even giving away, like I was doing a book review club for a little bit. Like every so often I'll open it up to all my newsletter subscribers and I'll say, hey, if you want a book, I will send you a book, just review it. And if you like that book, and since I write series, if you want to review the next book in the series, show me your review and I'll let you have the next book if you'll review it. And even then it's like, I'm giving you free books. It's hard to get reviews.
Yeah, it's awful.
Yeah, it's like pulling teeth. You send out I did for my new in Karma, I did a bunch of Facebook events, which was fun and it gave me a lot of new followers. And I would run contests to, send out the ARC for reviews. And I got maybe 3 people who did it, as opposed to like the 20 who actually won. So, you never know.
It's frustrating. And I think that's what turns a lot of indies away from the indie marketplace, trying to go hybrid, because they feel like, well, if I'm with a publisher, there's at least some clout that goes with that. There's some kind of marketing help. It may not be much, but there's something. Like if you do get a big 5, they do have a publicist who can get you into events. They do have some marketing to get you into, maybe a magazine or whatever that you might not have access to. But I feel like a lot of indies are getting disillusioned because of this whole marketing is just beating your head into a wall, that they look elsewhere to find new resources.
I think the key there, though, with the traditional publishing is they don't, unless you're a big name already, they don't put a lot behind you. Maybe in the beginning, but if you're not going out there and still doing your fair share of marketing, you're not going to see the returns that they want, and then they're going to just put you on the side because they need to focus on the people who are already making money for them. So, you got to market no matter what, and like you said, it's beating your head against the wall. For me, it's always like, when it first comes out, it's got a lot of steam, and then it just, for some reason, something happens and it goes off the rails. So I don't know.
It's tough, and we've spoken to both traditionally published authors and indie authors that are either doing great or not well at all, and so many different strategies. We had 2 guests on last year who kind of specialized in doing either Facebook ads or ads on Amazon, and both of these 2, and they told us their numbers on the show, are making over $250,000 a year with their books. They're making a very respectable income. However,
I was just gonna say, caveat to that.
Try and use their plan, and I don't know
how much are you spending. My husband had a really good point. He's like, they can make $250,000. Are they spending $210,000 to get that?
Well,
we don't know those numbers,
and that was my question. And what Rick had told me, one of the authors, is that, and I don't remember what the other had said, but what he had said is that he usually spends between $1,000 and $1,500 a month on advertising through Amazon. Now, my financial situation isn't going to be the same as Kelly's or Katie's or anyone else's, and I know that personally I can't gamble with $1,500 a month and still be okay, because not only is my wife going to beat my face in. Um, if I spend that money and I haven't done my ad just perfect and my research just perfect, it's not gonna yield that return. And then all of a sudden it's like, holy smokes, I'm way in the hole here. And I know that Katie and I went back and forth trying to try this method ourselves, only a lot smaller budget, and I didn't have any luck with it at all. I didn't see any kind of change in sales. I know, Katie, I think that you said that you saw a little bit of an increase, didn't you?
Yes, but I was going to mention there's other factors too that they don't necessarily talk about when it comes to creating the ads. Yes, they'll tell you what keywords you should look for, maybe how much to budget and who to target. But what you also have to take into consideration is when people do finally click that ad and get to your page, what are they seeing? Is your book cover something that's going to draw them in? Is your ad copy something that's going to draw them in? Do your reviews look good? There's so many other little factors too that just getting that one click and getting them to your website doesn't always mean you've made a sale. Yeah. And that was kind of the one factor that nobody really kind of predicted and changed up, you know, depending on whether you were doing the ads, Jason, or I was doing the ads. That could change the difference between what was a good ad and what wasn't a good ad.
Yeah, that Amazon landing page, it's got to be phenomenal. And I'll tell you what, I wish I had a little publicist inside my brain that was able to direct me on what things to do and where to go and what to say, because, you know, I really think that as an indie author, you have to be an expert in everything, or have friends that are experts in it all.
Part of the reason why hybrid is looking so great to me is because I love the freedom and the control and accountability to just do what I want, when I want, write what I want, everything timeline, not waiting 2 years, you know, all of these great things. But on the other hand, as you know, before we started this, I am not a tech savvy person. So we had some issues with me even getting on here tonight. So tech things are not my forte. And I'm lucky to have a group of friends who have, you know, indie published before and or tech people, and so they were able to help walk me through, and I've paid people to help me with things. And the stress of it, to do all of it yourself, is really hard. I'm almost rather at a certain point relinquish some of these, you know, control, like the cover and, you know, certain things about editing and things like that, to have it be somebody else's problem and just be able to write. Because as you know,
Amen.
As you said earlier, like, I just want to worry about the writing. I don't want to worry about querying. But I'm kind of the opposite, where I'm like, I don't want to worry about if it's, I've had issues with Amazon, I've had issues with it, you know, loading properly, with the right file being attached to the right book cover, like all of these things that are totally stressful. And like you said, yeah, we don't, big fives, you know, if you're a smaller author for them, you'll get a publicist and marketing behind you for about a month after your release. And then after that, it kind of dwindles unless your numbers are good, and then it'll hang out for you. But yes, it does give you more clout. Like, you know, we all know there are certain people who will say no to us because, you know, reviews in magazines and newspapers, for example, because they won't even look at indie. If you're not properly published properly, same goes with being in a contest. You know, certain ones are open to, you know, real published books only. And so it's kind of tough, you know. I love so many aspects about it, and I won't stop doing it on my own, but I mean, I'll take the help.
The other thing we talked about too, right before we went on the air, Cynthia, you were asking me about Phoenix Comic-Con, and that was something that, you know, yes, you can get into as a vendor and you can have a booth there, but to get on panels and to be able to do speaking engagements, which can bring you new readers, requires a publicist. It requires somebody else to make that connection. They don't want to talk to an indie by themselves.
Well, I was going to say, you know, they call us starving authors for a reason. So, I mean, to me, if you're going to put out that kind of money for advertisement or whatever, I would say, why don't you find a reputable publicist who can do something like that, that's going to actually maybe garner more attention than maybe someone sees your ad on Facebook, because we all know Facebook's finicky anyway. So of what they show advertisement wise. So I mean, if you're going to actually put out the big bucks to do something like that, I say get somebody who is in that field who can actually, you know, promote you, like Katie was saying, and get you on those big panels in those big conventions, which that's my bread and butter conventions, the Comic-Con. So I mean, that's what I would do.
Now, Katie, we kind of skipped over you with your querying process. I saw just a few days ago that you had posted it was one of these challenges where post the first 7 lines of your work in progress, which I actually thought was a lot of fun. I like that little challenge. And I saw that you posted the first, dozen or so lines from the second book in the series that I know that you're trying to get published traditionally. So what has your query process been like? How is it going for you? What are you doing?
Well, I used Query Tracker because I'm naturally forgetful, and I would hate to query somebody twice and piss people off because they all talk to each other. If you follow any agents on Twitter, they all talk to each other.
New York publishing is small.
Yes, yes. And so I use that to kind of narrow down who I should be querying. And I think right now I'm up to 30 on rejections, so not doing so good.
That's not bad.
You can't stop until you reach 300.
But my goal at this point is, and I said this before the show started too, I know people like trilogies, people like series, and I'm a series writer, so that's not an issue for me. First book is done, second book is about halfway written. So if by the time I get the third book written, and if I'm still not getting anything, any bites or any possible contracts, what I'll do is I'll just publish it myself, and I will do, quick release. I will do 1 book a month with a marketing plan and all that ahead of it. So the books won't go to waste, but I would really like to get somebody to pick it up and to take the reins on that one for me.
Now I'm so curious because you said you write series. So did you plot the trilogy ahead?
No, I am a total pantser.
I am a pantser at heart, and I'm doing my my series is a 5 to 6 book series, and I'm struggling going, I should really plot all this.
Hey, see, I started as a pantser, but for this series, because I wanted continuity throughout, I had to plot it. Mm-hmm. At least little things that I wanted to drop hints for.
I like to write to-do lists for my characters. So it's not necessarily a plot, but I have goals that I want them to get to. And on the one series behind me, it's 6 books. And it wasn't hard to get through all 6 books to write it because I knew ultimately where the character was going to end up. And it was just little steps along the way to get them there. So I do have a to-do list of what I want in this current series to happen, but I haven't quite got there. I haven't figured out which one goes in which book.
So in mind, you knew that like for each book has to have its own individual arc and then your series arc. So you kind of had that even though it wasn't fully written out for you. You just knew intuitively like what each book arc was.
Yes.
You're impressive.
I have the ideas all floating around in my head. And it doesn't mean that they're going to stay exactly as I planned them.
Right.
Because they always change. I may want the character to do one thing and then get halfway through the book and go, no, this isn't going to work. I have to figure out another way around it.
And what do they call it when you, gosh, the words are escaping me right now. It's not a plot, not an outline, but when someone goes through and takes all the major points out of a book and writes them down for you, or all the characters, it's something about it. It's not is it a Bible, a series Bible, something like that?
That's a TV. The Bible is actually is a TV reference, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, well, see, and okay, so here's my problem. I'm a pantser, but I want to be a plotter. Like, I feel like it'd be so much more efficient if I knew what was going to happen. But what happens is I will plot stuff out, and then not only will I not follow the plot line, but I will go in the opposite direction, and I don't know why. I don't know if there's like a rebellious teenage muse that's talking to me that just wants to fuck up everything I'm trying to do, or what?
Because you already know that story and you're bored. So you're like, what's more interesting? I already know how that one goes. Let's see where this one goes.
That's exactly right. Once I write the outline, it's like it's finished, and I don't.
You've already done it. You already know how it goes, and that's my struggle: is to stay on track, even though you know what it is, and it's not as exciting to discovery, right?
Exactly.
Like, all right, I'm gonna
make a checklist. Give your character a to-do list. That way, you're not hard outlining. You're not writing yourself into a corner, but you know what your character should do.
Yes.
That's really similar, yeah. Instead of doing if you write a full outline of the whole book, then yeah, it takes the energy away from it. But if you have like little places that you want to get to, when you get to them, you have a couple of different roads that you can take, and your characters will usually lead you somewhere fun, and that's the joy of writing anyway.
Yeah, well, and I need some dedicated fan to go through and read my books and like write down all these important little plot points that I might forget. That way, when I'm writing the next one, I can just glance at them and say, "Oh yeah, well, he already did that," or "He already said he hates lemons, so I can't." You don't have a
notebook? The notebook that you keep on the side, whether it's a physical one, like I have to have a physical notebook as well. And I also have spreadsheets and different things to keep track. But it's like, I start a new character, I will go, there you go, and I will go and I will write.
My show notebook.
New character's name, how old, details about them, so I can go back later, because I'm not one of these people. I don't know how George R.R. Martin does it, or like Cassandra Clare, these people who have giant casts in their books, and they're like, I know who that is. They can remember. Like, no, I don't remember. In my second book, there was a bunch of different correctional officers. Do you think I could remember? I was like, okay, which one was in the first one? So I have, little chapter 1 were these characters, and this was the basic, goal and scene next, because I cannot remember. Like, we have better things to do, people. Come on.
I do full character breakdowns. I like to, everything in their backstory, their eye color, their hair color, little nuances. I have all of that written down so that I can refer to it, and they don't wind up with blue eyes when they had green a second ago.
So true.
Well, and see, I have a good friend. Her name is Amber Dorn, and I think she writes under Amber Jaeger. And she is a plotter, and she is a meticulous note taker. So she turned me on to all these different writing worksheets online where they've got scene charts and character charts, and exactly what you were just describing, Cynthia, where you actually will script out everything about this character. That way, when you're writing, you can reference that and know exactly where you're going. And while I think that would be phenomenal if my brain could do that, it can't. It just can't do it. But I am so impressed by people who can do that, and who can really put in the time and have the organizational skills to make that happen. Because I would imagine that writing is a lot easier if you can go back and say, oh, this is like an open book test. I have my notes. I know what this everything about this character. Now let me move forward with that.
Well, I'm going to be honest. When I wrote The Demon Hunter, they were both, they're separate trilogies that actually became one huge fantasy epic. But I kind of pantsered through that one. But when I was doing the Silky Butters superhero series, I went and found out what J.K. Rowling's method was for Harry Potter, and she wrote out everything for this world. So I said, okay, I need to do that too. I didn't do it as intricate as she did, because I'm not dealing with so much stuff, but yeah, I just wanted to emulate the great one.
Well, and I was just going to say, if there's someone to emulate or imitate, I think that you could do a lot worse than J.K. Rowling. She's created a fantastic series, and I absolutely love it. So, Katie, you're up to 30 rejections right now, and if you get through book 3 and you haven't found a publisher yet, you're gonna go indie with it.
Yeah, I have my editor. Even though I'm querying right now, my editor's already got a copy of the first book and plans on going through it so that it's ready to do what I want with it, either to make it look as good as it can before it goes to an agent, or whether it gets published. Okay.
So now, when we decide to go indie, what do we do to prepare for that big new release? Whether you're planning to release boom boom boom, a book a month, or whether you're a 1 book a year kind of writer like me, what is your method for starting this new release process? Do you have months and months of preparation where you're building up to it, or do you just go bam, I'm getting it out there? What do you guys think? Cynthia, what do you do?
It depends when I finish it, honestly. Sometimes I will finish it too fast, and I just have to put it out there. For Karma, I made sure I knew when it was coming out. I wanted it to be right on the heels of Wonder Woman because of the superhero theme. So I made sure that it was done well ahead of schedule. And then I did a lead in for it, but not too far out. I think it was maybe 3 months of teasing. If that, definitely did a cover reveal because of the beautiful artwork. So just little teasers here and there, Facebook events, and then you drop the big publishing release, and then just go from there. That's what I did.
Okay. Now, what about you, Kelly?
Oh, I have a hard time with this. I've put 2 books out, but it's definitely tricky to know exactly what to do. So I usually have gotten a NetGalley for both, which if any of the viewers aren't familiar, NetGalley is basically where a lot of bloggers and reviewers go. They can get free advanced reader copies of the book and do reviews. So the idea is to try to get reviews built up, a little bit before the book comes out. So there's and some publicity through them putting on their blog or on whatever website. So I do those. I've done blog tours and book blitzes, different things like that. I did a cover reveal for the first book, which was pretty helpful. I did a pre-sale, so I put the book up. I didn't do it for the second one because I wanted to see the difference between doing it for one and doing it for the other. And, you know, it wasn't huge difference. The pre-sale, there were, you know, an initial, you know, jump. I think I did a whole 4 weeks ahead, and that was about it right now for then. And then, you know, try to do interviews here and there where I could and be, you know, just talking about the book. And for the second book, I did get a publicist, and I was able to get some local signings at Chapters in Indigo and did a few radio broadcasts and did different podcasts and things like that, which I think helped. I would notice that after I was on a few things, like I was on the Stephen King podcast, which is cool because obviously they heart Stephen King, and he's my everything. I'm not gonna lie, love him. Him and JK. So come on, but so that was great to be on there. And then I did notice a little spike. There was like a little.
How do you approach your editing? Do you have a professional editor that you use?
The editing process is epic over here. So I write it, and it can vary between, you know, 6 weeks for a draft and 6 months for a draft. It just depends on what's happening. I go over it again. I send it to an alpha reader, and then I get it back. I send it to a few beta readers. I work on it again. I get it back, and then I send it to my editor, and she goes through 2 passes, and then it goes to my proofreader. So and then there's still errors sometimes, and I'm like, are you kidding? Like 12 people have looked at this, and there are typos. So,
yeah. Cynthia, do you have a professional editor that you use?
I did for these last couple of novels. I actually have one sitting in the queue that is waiting to be published that I use the same editor for. But I did go out ahead and hire a professional this time around because I was very specific in the marketing of Karma, because I wanted this to hit this time. This is like hit or miss is the last one, you know, let's go for the fences. So I made sure all my I's dotted and T's crossed. Before with the Demon Hunter, because I was with a small press originally, they had an in-house editor, so that was taken care of for me. But my grammar's not the greatest, I'm not going to lie, so I definitely will outsource that. Whereas some of the other stuff, like the covers or whatever, I'll do myself. But something like editing and proofreading, I'll look for somebody with those chops.
You know, when I first released all 5 of my novels, I used a retired school teacher for my editing, and she was fantastic. I thought she did a great job. She was really good with the language. She's really good with the grammar and very meticulous, as most teachers are. After several years of sales not being what I wanted them to be, and now when I first got started, I was going like gangbusters. My first novel did fantastic for a year and a half or so, and then sales started to drop. But fast forward, and I read a lot of on-writing type books by, you know, notable authors. My favorite probably being Stephen King's. And there's one thing that echoes throughout all of them, and that is go back to the writing. If it's not going well and it's not doing what you want it to do, go back to the writing. Go back to the writing. And so I really, it's hard for indie authors to hear that and to do that, because we write a novel, we work our asses off, and we put our hearts into it. And we don't want to think that, okay, maybe the writing isn't what it should be. Maybe it's not as good as it should be. And maybe that's not why I'm getting the sales I want. But I'm starting to really believe that going right back to your writing, it should be the first thing that you do. You know, if the sales aren't great, if the reviews aren't great, well, suck it up. You got to kill your darlings, get in there and do the hard stuff. Hire someone who really knows what they're doing to do that hard stuff for you. You know, you may need a developmental editor. You know, you're going to need somebody to do that high pass editing work where they're going through and really hammering all your plot points and your plot holes. And then you're going to need a line editor, someone to go through there and you know, lick all your naps. And I was amazed going back through my books with a professional editor, just how much stuff is getting missed. And it's not that there were typos, it's not that there were grammar errors, it's just that a professional editor is going to know what readers want to see or what a publisher is going to want to see, and they're going to help you hone your writing into that. And so it's made a big difference for me, and I'm really happy with the way the writing is looking now. So I'm hoping that translates into more popularity, more happy readers, and hopefully more sales down the road.
It's tricky though, because I mean, I'm fortunate enough that I did go through all those professional stages and paid and did all of that. And the reviews that I do have, the small reviews I do have by strangers through whatever, they're great. Like, they're good reviews. I have a 4.11, I think, on Goodreads. Like, it's all right. But getting exposure is the hard part. So I know what you're saying. Like, if you don't have a great product, then the word of mouth isn't going to be there, and there's going to, you know, be issues with it. But I still think for my friends who are Big Five, who have all of the professional everything behind them and have even marketing, and they still can't seem to quite budge through a certain extent and get sales. I mean, it is a mystery of why some really make it. There are some Big Five books out there that are just beautiful, wonderful, you know, amazing book, you know, books. And there's some that I go, where were the editors on this? Where were, you know, the content people on this? Like, what's happening? This is professionally done. And it's and you're just wondering, like, why some make it and some don't. You see some of these, like, I am going to say it, I don't care, 50 Shades of Grey, come on.
Yep.
I didn't really read it, but that thing was not good. You know, when you look at it from a standpoint of art, from what I understand, sentence level and things like that, it was not good. Somehow that blew up, and lots like it. And, you know, people who are indie make tremendous amounts of money on similar things or on romance or whatever else that's happening. And the content and quality, you know, aren't always the greatest, but there's something in there story-wise, or something in there that's captivating people enough to make them go. So, like, you know, it's one of those things where the content of the story, is it the storyline versus, you know, how wonderful the art is.
There's an element of luck to it too.
That's exactly what it is, Katie. And that's something that I think that it's also really difficult to hear, is that luck plays a huge part in this. You know, if you read and listen to the writing greats of the last century, they're going to tell you that quality writing, good storytelling is the biggest thing. However, it's also luck, because you look at 50 Shades of Grey, and I've read 50 Shades of Grey. I read all 3 books. My wife was a big fan, and consequently I read them because they're there on the Kindle. And apart from the shock value of the initial book, where you've got all this, you know, crazy sex and bondage and stuff, it was really written at a low grade level. It was, but at the same time, that really worked for her, because the novels were accessible to people who didn't want to read at a higher level. And she got really lucky and ended up making a boatload of money. And so I commend her for that. But, you know, I think that we should focus on quality. But damn, if I stumbled myself into some good luck, I sure as hell wouldn't complain about that. You know, I am reading, actually, I just returned it to the library because I couldn't stand it, a novel, and I'm not going to tell you the name or the title, but he is a New York Times #1 bestseller, a thriller novelist, and I'm trying to read as many as I can because that's what I'm writing now. And I'm reading this, and I'm thinking, oh my God, my editor would never let this chapter leave the ground.
You get away with things when you have a name, right?
Holy shit, you can.
Incredible. Jackie Collins. Jackie Collins was this huge romance author, and her writing was terrible. Every other line was he said, she said, he said, just on and on. But, you know, she had a name, so there you go.
But it also goes to the point of, like, I consider myself, I'm a much better storyteller than I am a writer. I am by no means going to be like, I'll accept this award, thank you for my craft. Like, it's not where I'm at right now, and that's fine. But people say, you know, I'm a good storyteller. They like where the story's going. It's very interesting and things like that. But I'm not, you know, under any illusions that I am F. Scott Fitzgerald or somebody sitting here, you know, Hemingway sitting here and telling you about the great, you know, novel that I'm going to write. It's just not the way that it is. And I know there is something to be said. Like, I loved Twilight when that came out because she captivated me. People rip that apart and say there's issues with, you know, it wasn't, you know, wonderfully written. It was to me because I didn't stop to pay attention to what she was writing. I was so immersed in the story and what was going to happen next and that's why it was so popular. So
she created characters that people could fall in love with in a story that was really enjoyable for people.
Exactly. And for me, that's what it's about. So I don't, if I'm not the best writer, that's okay.
Yeah. I just want people to enjoy my books.
People to love me.
That's the thing, isn't it? And that's the sad part of being an indie or an author in general, is you put your heart and soul into writing this story. If nobody reads it, it's kind of a letdown. You want that feedback from the readership. So, I mean, I think we all got to pull together for each other and promote within, because I think a lot of it is who you know within the industry. I was talking to somebody who was telling me, they're telling me you don't write romance, but you should try to get into that anyway, because that's a huge community and they all pull together and help each other. So,
yeah. And I think that the indie community, we say this over and over on this show, is fantastic for trying to help each other. I think that, some of us have really made it, and I really try to put extra weight on what they're saying. But at the same time, and we've even talked about this on this episode, that those methods don't work for everyone. What works for Cynthia might not work for Kelly or Jason or Katie. Our books are going to sell differently. Our fans are going to respond differently. But having each other's backs, I think, is very important. What I'm doing right now, I signed on with a small press publisher. And so I'm not going to have big five backing. I'm not going to have big marketing dollars. But what I am going to have is a team of people who are passionate about what they're doing and about what I've written, that's going to help try to push me forward. And I think that as a community, that's what we all need to be doing. We not quibble about stuff, not get into drama or any of the little Facebook politics that seem to pop up every other frickin' day. Is just get behind each other and say, hey, let's make our readers happy. Let's promote each other, and let's, be positive about it.
There's such a mentality that we're in competition with each other. And the fact of the matter is, if I read an urban fantasy book, I read many urban fantasy books. So if I like yours, I might also like, the 2, 3, 4 people next to you. So, I'm really with you on that, and I always promote other authors and friends of mine who are writers, and there's room for everybody, I think. So.
Well, actually, I think me and Katie need to share a table at the next convention, because our writing's very similar. So.
Oh, definitely. When's the next one coming up?
Don't even know. I'll have to look at the calendar.
Well, and I think Kelly, because, and I'll chat with you about this offline as well. But I think that for authors within the same genre, doing some cross promoting. Not only with social media, but in newsletters and even in the books themselves. I know a lot of authors that will include a chapter from someone else's book at the end of theirs that's of a similar genre, and I think that could be really helpful. And so I think that if you're YA fantasy, that you got to connect with those other YA fantasy people and start to work on marketing with them and draw from their experience and maybe even collaborate a little bit and get on there.
And I'm a fan of also doing giveaways for other people. So something whatever, then you will get somebody else's book. Like I'll give you their book instead of mine. You know what I mean? Because if you're on my mailing list, chances are you've probably bought a book. So it's like let me give you something else. So Speaking of books, Jason, I see behind you, there's a book on a stand with a girl, and I see the word night. Is this your book?
Yes, The Dark and
That's
Dank.
gorgeous. I have to tell you, I was there's something night, and there's like a woman in a green mist, and whatever it is, it's wonderful. So I was like, oh, what's that?
I appreciate that, and my wife actually did the photography for that book, and because we love the model, and she's a good friend of ours, so we sent that to the cover artist, and she worked with it. But
very cool.
I
just send mine. I did my covers. A woman in England did them for me, but I will be for my fantasy series. Assuming I'm just so positive. I'm like, when I have to put them up myself because nobody picks them up, then my friend. Let's be realistic. It's probably who knows. But I have a friend who's a wonderful artist, and she's a painter, and so she will actually. Hello. She will actually. I don't know. She'll actually draw or paint and then take a picture of it, and she'll manipulate it on Photoshop and does wonderful covers. So I'm looking forward to that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Oh,
So
fun.
good when you can make them yourself. That's amazing. Your wife is talented. So
She is pretty awesome. I got to give her that. All right. Well, we're kind of winding down to the. Actually, we're a little bit overtime now, Katie.
Yep, just a little bit.
I have like 80 more things that I could talk to these girls about tonight, but I'm going to
we'll
have
just
to
have to
save
meet
them.
again.
I was going to
Here
say
we
we're
go.
going to have you guys back on again so we can chat more about stuff.
Yeah, my battery was dying anyway, so.
Well, we know what we'll do. We'll just reschedule another chat. That way we can all continue this conversation. There we go. I like that idea.
Before we go, can I have each of you kind of tell us a little bit about your most recent release and where people can get it?
My most recent release, like I said, it's called Karma. It's the first in a 5-part series called the Silky Butter Superhero Series. That's a mouthful, I know, but it's light, it's lighthearted, it's fun, it's a superhero genre. I try not to tackle too seriously, but there is a little bit of an underlying couple of messages in there just because of the character's background. She's Indian. It's different. It's a different take on the superhero genre, and it's just fun characters doing fun things. So it's exclusively on Kindle right now. I'm working on the print release for it. It was supposed to be done, but I've had a hell of a year. So I'll be finishing the print and the second one by next year for sure.
Wonderful, wonderful. And Kelly, I know you told us a little bit about it already, but can you tell us again about your most recent release?
The most recent release is Wicked Fallout, and it's the second book in the series, but can be read as a standalone novel. And it is an adult psychological thriller based on my character, Ryan Wilkinson, who was a serial killer when she was a teen and was incarcerated. And it's very fun, and you should check it out. And it's everywhere: Kobo, iBooks, Amazon, and Chapters Indigo. And if you're in the Vancouver Lower Mainland area, it's in the stores as well there. So.
Now, Katie, is there anything that you want to promote right now? Do you have any big stuff going on?
During the month of December, I'm doing a 99-cent sale on first issue books. So first in the series for The Little Werewolf, the Old Town Pack, and the Immortalis series are all 99 cents or free. And then at the end of the month, each one of the Chronicles of the Uprising books are going to be set at 99 cents for the last minute Christmas sale.
Awesome.
And since we're talking about books, I'll give you the log line I came up with for the one that I'm trying to query right now.
Oh, you're going to tell us something about it?
Well, you know what it is. You've read it. All right. So the log line for this one is: the key to stopping a weapon of magical destruction from annihilating Las Vegas relies in the tree-shaped birthmark on Sage's wrist.
Wow, cool. I like it. That's a long one, and you've got it memorized. Are you going to be able to repeat that over and over again perfectly?
We'll see, but that's kind of like my first liner when I'm sending my queries out.
Okay.
And then I go into the explanation in the query, but hopefully it's that you got to get the one line out there.
Now, do you have it's this book meets this book kind of thing yet?
I've been calling it Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. meets Shadowhunters.
Oh, I like it. Very cool. Very cool.
Very cool indeed.
Awesome.
That's interesting. Mine is Moonlighting meets Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So
Okay.
Cool.
if anybody remembers that show.
Now, how about you, Jason?
Guys. What's that?
How about you, since we did everybody else?
Oh, goodness.
When does your book come out from your publishing house?
It is next September, actually. We've got kind of a long build-up period, and we're actually going to be releasing 3 in a row.
Oh, wow.
So, and then hopefully in the next year or so, I'll have a new novel written. But I've been doing a lot of short fiction over this last year, and I'm currently giving away 2 stories on Insta Freebie. All you have to do is sign up for my newsletter list, and we'll put a link up to that. But they're fun, cool short stories. One is more of a literary fiction. The other is a straight up horror story. So people can just check those out for free and hopefully enjoy them and check out other things that I've written. But, yeah.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much to both of you for joining us tonight. It has been a really fun show. We're definitely going to have you both back on because we have so much that we can chat about. You guys have been a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And for
It was
all
really fun. Thanks so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. It was great to have you on. And to all our viewers out there, thank you for watching again, and we will see you next week with another episode of Spilling Ink. All right, well, let me make sure I can pronounce everyone's names right. Cynthia Vespia.
Yes.
All right, and Kelly Charron.
Sharon. It's all good.
Charron? Like
People say
Sharon?
it the French way. I just prefer it Sharon, like more. Just more.
Sharon. Okay, so
Sharon.
I'm just going to replace that C with an S right now so I don't mess that up.
Yeah.
Tonight we have with us Kelly Charron. Damn it, I messed it up. All right, we're gonna do you again. Tonight we have Kelly Charron with us. How's it going, Sharon?
I'm good, thank you.
Damn it, you hear that? I called you Sharon instead of Kelly.
That's okay.